We're excited to have you join us this evening for the rebrand and reboot of Women Organizing Women Democrats, WoW Dems, as Texas WILD, Women Inspiring Leadership and Democracy. Former Presidents Trish Patterson, Sadia Ahmed, and Sarah Mitchell will remain on the board as Treasurer, Communications, and Membership Chair, respectively, and current Secretary Ellen Sloan, who hopefully will be able to join us here in a little bit, will continue to document. Rachel Mello has been confirmed by the board and the members as the new president effective July 1st, 2025. She is a dedicated public servant who most recently ran for Texas State Senate District 8 while continuing to work as a teacher. She has been in education for 15 years and has actively worked to build a brighter future for a stronger and more inclusive society. The mission statement is still in line with what has been WoW Dems' mission since its inception. So we are a grassroots movement committed to empowering, supporting, and mobilizing women to lead in public office. We believe real democracy thrives when women from all backgrounds have the tools, support, and platform to lead boldly in their communities. Through grassroots organizing, leadership development, and voter engagement, WILD builds a future where women's voices shape policy, power, and progress at every level of government. So you can see it just kind of builds and expands on what was our motto here, which you can see on my shirt: Empower, Connect, Elect. We do want to really talk about what we all want to see, what we have seen work in the past, what are some hurdles that we can all overcome if we work together and collaborate, kind of that aspect. Now we're just kind of looking at what is happening in our communities and saying, okay, how can we take this and just build on top of it to be able to actually really expand and collaborate and make sure everyone feels welcome and included.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us this evening. WoW was established in, I think, 2013. So it's been around for a while. It was established as an organization that was women focused and primarily with the focus of getting more women involved in political leadership and civic engagement. And they've operated under that name for, I guess, 12 years. Mm-hmm. What we have done in the last few months is we have transitioned to Women Inspiring Leadership and Democracy, which is going to be our new name, WILD. And how that was inspired is a funny story, but not relevant right now. So I did send out the agenda, but I've also posted it in the chat. There's the link, so you should be able to access that. All of the documents that we're going to be looking at tonight are posted there. They should be linked there. So everything should be easily accessible. And hopefully I got all the permissions done correctly so you can comment directly on the document as we're working through things. My bio is there for those of you who don't know me or who are less familiar. If you're outside of Collin County, Hunt County area and you don't know who I am, there's a little bio there about my background. The bylaws are there. So the first thing on the agenda, I think, is the new board. So we voted on that and the updated mission statement and the name change. So those things were approved by the board and the current paid members by vote over the last few weeks. So then the next thing that we have is the bylaws. Trish, I think you were going to look at the bylaws and provide some feedback. Did you have?
I did. I sent it over to Sarah. So I'm assuming Sarah made those changes.
Recently or previously?
No, previously. I didn't have
yeah. Okay, yeah. We'll send those back over because I know there were a few things we were trying to make on that and like the website. So I think I do have a list. And yes, that's a good point. I'll get those over to you, Rachel.
Okay. All right. Then the next thing is we are in the process of transitioning our software that we use. So a lot of what we're using tonight is in Google Drive. We are trying to get everything moved into Dropbox because A, that keeps everything in PDF form. So we have a consistent record of what the document actually says. And B, that helps with transition as we're rotating people out, because if it's in Google Drive, the person who created it owns it. And so if they leave the organization, then we're losing access to some of our records as we're going through that process. So we are
unfortunately, even if the ownership ownership changes and we remove their access from the folder, they still have access to that document always because it is theirs. So that's one of the other reasons why we made the switch to Dropbox. Sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, no, that's so just organizational security and record keeping, those kinds of things. We are currently hosting our website through Bluehost. It's terrible. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's clunky. It's not user friendly. We are able to make it work, but it's very frustrating on the back end to get it something that is presentable and professional looking that we're satisfied with. So we're talking about changing vendors for that, but we haven't made a decision. I use Wix is what I use for my website that I have. I loved it. I built everything out myself. So, I mean, it's still got a learning curve, but it's not as bad as Bluehost. It's also more expensive. So, what you do get with Wix, though, is you get the database. So anybody who registers, you get that. That is built in. So you don't necessarily need your Mobilize account because you can post all your events through your website that way. But then you also lose out on coordinating with other groups that are using Mobilize. They can't promote your events as easily. So there's a trade-off no matter what we do. It's just figuring out what we want to do and where we want to make those transitions at. Then this is where I want to spend the bulk of our time tonight, is looking at the platform. I would like us to have an organizational platform because it gives us a consistent idea of where we're going and what our objectives are. It helps define what we see as our mission as an organization, and it helps articulate what our core issues are. And it also helps to explain some of the things, like when we say we need childcare, why? That helps explain some of those things. When we say we care about the environment, why? When we say we need healthcare, what are we talking about? Everyone thinks when women say we need healthcare, we're talking about abortion. Nowhere in this platform is the word abortion. Okay, we need healthcare. We need mental health care. We need bodily autonomy. We need to be able to go to the doctor and make decisions about our own bodies, because it's not about abortion. It's about me having control over my own body. And then in those kinds of ways, we're looking at expanding to the LGBTQ community, because bodily autonomy applies to everyone. If you don't own your body, you don't really own anything. If you don't have control over your body, you don't really have control over anything. Like, nothing else really matters. And so that's kind of the perspective that I took when I was creating this document. And
I actually really like the broader perspective on that, because it really does make a difference. One of the things kind of all talked about previously, much like when we're going from women organizing women Democrats to, women inspiring leadership and democracy. Obviously, we want women to be at the forefront, but instead of women organizing women, we're actually expanding that second part to make sure that we're welcoming. So our non-binary friends and activist siblings, as well as our trans activists and siblings, are able to not feel excluded from that description. But also, when you gatekeep, in Matt Walsh's terms, what is a woman, you're also, in addition to yes, you will get that response from the bigotry that you want, but you're also going to be gatekeeping women who don't meet your exact definition. And that medical support for gender is for anybody, like anyone who's gone to a dermatologist, anyone, who needed to go get more estrogen or balance their testosterone levels, because that's not just a male or men thing. And unfortunately, so much is being affected because the controlling over women. And several of you know my story with the history of a miscarriage and stillbirth, and the fact that there's so much focus on the very misunderstanding and just disgusting twist of what an abortion is really puts us all in danger. And especially because so so many OBs, because they actually do know what that means, are leaving. Rural hospitals are getting shut down. Like we literally are dying even more than we already were because these decisions. So I love the fact that we need healthcare. Yes, that means mental health. Yes, that means reproductive rights, and it's so much more.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you guys said that.
Basically, we're looking at this idea that local, state, and federal laws interact, and they're interacting in a way that is impacting women and how we live our lives. And in Texas, that's not necessarily good. So when we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about reproductive healthcare. Mental healthcare is a different section. So this is focused on reproductive healthcare. So making sure you have confidential access to medication, making sure that family planning services are funded, removing restrictions on public funds, not to pay for abortion, but so that we have access to healthcare that is not abortion. Because if you're defunding Planned Parenthood, you're defunding cancer screenings. This is a local issue. Travel bans, that was in the GOP platform. They want there to be travel bans. They want you to not be able to use state roads to cross the border to get medical care. They want to be able to summon your medical records from out of state. There's an ongoing litigation with New York because the state of Texas has found a doctor that operates out of New York, and New York is refusing to file the paperwork to require that doctor to pay the fine. So this is an ongoing thing, is if we can't access healthcare here, can we access it outside of the state? What links is the state going to go to make sure you don't access the healthcare that you need? And then maternal health care, expanding Medicaid, extending postpartum coverage. I think this might have been done, actually. I have to go check. It was expanded, but I'm not sure how long it was expanded. Investing in initiatives that reduce the maternal mortality rate. That includes research. That includes collecting data, which the state is not currently doing. And then maternal mental health care. I don't know if you've seen, there was something going around on social media that talks about how pregnant women taking antidepressants impacts birth defects. And so it looks like they might be laying the groundwork to take away mental health medication from pregnant patients. So that looks like it's going to be fun.
Yeah, that's horrifying. And just to also, like, again, give a little bit more info on this, as we sort of talked about a little bit earlier, like when you actually stop the restrictions on abortions, maternal and infant mortality goes down. They want to, say that it's about like, reproducing and like the children and the mothers. But the reality is, when you wait until a woman is in sepsis, now she can't have any more kids. So that whole breeding program that you're interested in, you just completely destroyed. The other piece too, when we talk about mental health, like, as an example, because of, the history that I had, when I went into the hospital to give birth to my already dead daughter, there was a law in place already that said, before you leave, you have to tell us what funeral arrangements you're making if the fetus is over a certain weight. There was nothing about making sure that I had postpartum support. There was nothing about making sure I had, a therapist or a psychologist. Like, they don't actually care about you. It was very much a situation of like, again, it's that whole control piece, because they're not doing, lunches, etc. for these kids. They're not expanding Medicaid. It's just so important to not only say, hey, for those who are getting medication, like, and there are safe ones that you can take during pregnancy. And again, like Rachel mentioned earlier, that's privacy between you and your doctor, because we should still get the help in addition to being able to be pregnant, with our consent, and therefore having that pregnancy and with not only the support of a living, healthy baby, but also being able to have our postpartum support for when we need.
This is a working document. And like I said, all of you should have the ability to comment. If you click on the link in the agenda, you should be able to open it up and add comments as we're going through. So if you see anything, or if you think of a question, or you think of something that's not here that maybe should be highlighted, you're absolutely welcome to add comments. And we can work through those as well. Then the second one is economic justice. So this, I kind of got finished with this and went, oh, so we support unions because they do all of these things. So raising the minimum wage, guaranteeing paid sick leave, paid family and medical leave. I have had 3 kids. I have had all 3 of them during the school year. I had 2 of the 3 with no paid leave. What you have is you have, in my profession, I'm a teacher, you have women, predominantly women in the education field coming to work. You have a certain number of days during the school year that you're allowed to take off. If you don't use all those days, they roll over. So you have young women who want to have kids, who are coming to work sick, who are missing out on important family events because they don't want to take those days off, because they want to save them so that they have them when they get pregnant, so that they can afford to take time off to be at home with their kid, with their new baby. And so this is like a whole system of, like, first of all, you need to be able to take time off when you're sick. Like, it's not good for anybody. And it's certainly not good for the community if the teachers are coming to work sick, because then they're exposing your kids. And then they're all going home and going out to, Little League or Boy Scout or whatever, and exposing the community. And so teachers need to be able to stay home when they're sick. And teachers need to be able to be paid when they have kids, when they need to take time off or medical leave. And it's not just teachers, it's everybody. I know that happens in fast food. I know it happens in, service industries, happens everywhere. That's just my experience. It's better for everybody when we have the ability to take care of ourselves. We need equal pay laws. We have equal pay laws. They're not enforced. You're supposed to be paid the same work for the same job. And they get around that by saying you don't have as much experience, or, you take too much time off work to deal with your family or other things. So these laws need to actually be enforced. Is what needs to happen. And this is where I go, this is what the union does. If you're in a union and there's a union contract, then everybody's getting paid a union wage. It's a set wage for a set year of experience, or a set wage for a set job. And it doesn't matter what your gender is or what you did before. You're doing this job, you get paid this much. And it really should be that way. Affordable and accessible health and childcare. When my babies were young, and it's been a long time since they were young, when my boys were young, when they were both in daycare at the same time, we paid $14,000 in 1 year for childcare. That was more than we paid for our mortgage that year. We lived in a little tiny house, but it's gone up since then. It's more expensive now than it was then. And I don't know how in God's name anybody can afford to have a kid in daycare. Like, how? How are you eating and having childcare?
And so many women have to leave the workplace because of daycare. Like, one of the project managers I worked with when I was in process, after her maternity leave, or her, parental leave, basically, she had to completely resign because with, either her second or third child, she was unable to afford it. It was basically her working to pay for daycare. That's ridiculous.
And that's exactly what it is. Yeah. And I don't know how it is that we have daycare and our childcare workers are paid so little, and our parents pay so much for care. So where is the money going? Is it insurance? I suspect it may be insurance and property taxes and things like that are eating into that, because I know that we're paying so much and we're getting so little, and the workers get so little. The wages are so low. And then we're still in the economic stuff, supporting entrepreneurs and small businesses. And we know a lot of this has been targeted by the Trump administration. So a lot of those programs are being targeted. Ending violence against women. So domestic violence, fully funding survivor services, strengthening for protections for survivors, making sure that domestic violence victims should be given similar protections that sexual assault victims get, so that if a prosecutor is making a plea deal, if they come up parole, etc., like, you should be notified of that. I have had to have a restraining order before. I want to know where that person is and that he is far away from me. We should have these things. Combating human trafficking. I don't know if you're aware, but they just gutted the federal office that tracks human trafficking.
I wonder why.
The timing. Like, dude, read the room. read the room, making sure that these people, male, female, all have the support that they need, because this does not just affect women, this also affects young men. Most of these victims are in the foster care system, and they either run away or they age out and they don't have any other options. And so they're doing what they need to survive, and they wind up in a mess. And then comprehensive sex education, because if you don't know the parts of your body, you can't communicate to anyone when someone is hurting you in an inappropriate way. Like, there are some things that our kids need to know, because that's how they stay safe. Then this part is civic engagement. So it's voting rights, it's promoting women in leadership, making sure that we are engaging women in the political process. That includes teaching them how the system works, helping them get registered to vote, monitoring those voter registration laws, because there may be a need to have workshops to help women continue to have access to the right to vote. So what does that look like? And then we already talked about the sex definition laws, like what is male and what is female. I am convinced, and the longer I've been in this, the more convinced I become, that the reason they want to define what a woman is so they can control it. You cannot control what you cannot define. And that, I believe, is the sole reason why this is a thing. Also, these new laws about young girls participating in sports and extracurricular activities, there are laws being passed about having to have a physical check. Who's doing that? Who signs up for that job? What kind of person signs up to do that job? Like, I have some concerns. And how many girls are going to miss out on participating on those activities because their parents are like, nope, we're not doing that. So that completely undermines Title IX and the reason why that was put in place, to expand access for girls. So then those were the four that I started out with, like, just because of the strain that puts on that relationship. So that's it. It's 10 sections. I think it's good. It's heavy. There's lots of heavy stuff in there, but thoughts, feedback. I'm not seeing a lot of comments. So
yeah, and of course we want to make sure that everyone, like Rachel mentioned, like, has the feedback and the, like, oh hey, like, what if we combined like these, two paragraphs, and we want it to be a living document, because of course as things change it will impact us all. And yeah, in the chat, I know we were mentioning some people have an 8 o'clock hard stop, so I want to touch on the fact that now you've kind of seen what the mission is and what that mission really entails, and then we want it to be a building community exercise on how we actually execute and implement this in our communities. So we really want to be able to say, hey, there are some people that are going to be able to, be part of the board. There are some people who don't have that time, but want to support and want to amplify and want to share. And, for that, we do have like the annual membership. It's $30. And like Rachel is about to touch on, if you join like this month, well, I say this month, meaning like crazily enough, it's nearly August, like you will be covered for like that whole year, because usually it's calendar, but we really, because we are kind of kicking off mid-year, we want to make sure we're really taking that into account. And we want y'all to be part of this process as we go. And because obviously a lot of these companies are bending the knee to, fascism, we want to really think about how we are communicating and how we are collaborating. That might be something like Discord, like we've talked about, the, making sure women are technologically educated, because a lot of people are no longer on Facebook for very, very valid reasons. So, is it something like that? Is it a Google chat workspace where we can really vet, like, our members specifically will be the only ones in this space? So we might have, some men, but they are allies, they are feminists, they have shown us who they are through their talk and their actions, and not just, some of the things we've unfortunately seen a few people who are well known in a couple of these counties counties where they're like, oh, yes, I am an ally, but we know that women don't feel comfortable around them. So we want to be able to have that vetting process. And that is one of the reasons we have, membership. And it's also, of course, so that we can fund things like Rachel is wanting to kind of take us in the next direction of, but also for filing fees, for, these marketing campaigns, for these women candidates who are saying, I want to run. It is really important. So, Saya posted the link for a membership, again, $30 annually. And we want to have the discussion that Rachel is about to open on the website, whether it's .org or .com, the logo, and as well as how we want to communicate. But I am recording this. I will be making sure you're all in the loop on how to do this. We want it to be a very organic and collaborative experience. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah. So I was kind of perusing the chat. So I know some people are interested in the committees. We don't have like a huge membership right now. But these are kind of the committees that we're looking at building out. And then like Sarah said, if you pay, I guess we can start it now. There's no reason to wait until August 1. But yeah, the point is you're going to be a member through the next cycle. So all the way until after the next election. And then we'll see where we're at then.
I figured what's a week.
Candidates, communication, events and outreach. I'm going to be working on this because I want to be able to take this out to, for sure, the 5 counties. That's Dallas, Collin, Denton, Tarrant, and Grayson are the 5 counties. So for sure, those 5 counties. And then I would like to add in Hunt and Rockwall. I think with the population growth that we're seeing throughout the region, that they would be a good fit, as well as they overlap with some of the districts that Collin and some of the other, and Dallas. And if they redraw the map, they will overlap even more. I think that they would be a nice addition to kind of really round it out as far as a regional group. I would like to take this and present it to them in some format. And then, so I'll be reaching out to their county party chairs to help facilitate that. And then fundraising, legislative. Yeah, so that's where we're at. I did the community issues breakdown. We're not going to have time to go through that, but it's there for you. So you can kind of see what are the priority issues in each county. And then the 3 logos, I did 3. If you click on the links, you can see them. There's this one is a favorite. Everybody likes the pink fire. Then there's this one with the lipstick. Now, the official name of the organization is Women Inspiring Leadership and Democracy. And these are all done in the same color palette. So we can move the colors around if we like a different look. But
so are we WILD or are we Texas WILD?
The official name is Women Inspiring Leadership and Democracy. So that is WILD. I like the addition of the Texas because I was dreaming real big when I dreamed this up, y'all. I was like, if we can do this and be successful and it begins to be replicated, right? Then being Texas WILD kind of distinguishes us as the state chapter. So that was kind of why I wanted to add the Texas. But the official name is Women Inspiring Leadership and Democracy. So that's WILD. So if we wanted to take the Texas off and just go with WILD as then I think this one works better. The lipstick is nice. It's, we could use all, like they're all in the same color palette. So we could use all of them depending on what we're doing. We don't necessarily have to pick one, but any thoughts on the logos? Or if we don't like any of them, we'll start over. That's an option too.
Yeah, and feel free to come off mute to kind of give some feedback. And then while y'all are doing that, we mentioned like the websites .org as well as .com are available, which we will be updating obviously the website for. Currently we have wowdems.org. So I was kind of leaning in that direction. But again, we want it to be very collaborative. So like, let us know.
Can you go through those again, but kind of just pause on each one for like a few seconds?
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
this is the first one I did.
Just mentioned, and she says she also likes .org as an educator. I think that would carry more weight if we publish information, versus the site with .com. So yeah, that's a really good point too. Sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, no, this is the first one I made, so I'm kind of partial to it just because I did it first. But also the pink flame is fun. So then the lipstick was Liz's idea. She was like, "What would it look like if?" It's like, I don't know. know. Let's see. So, and then this one.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Samina, because like with a slash, because it is like wild. Because I did, one of my favorites was the fire. I was leaning toward that one, but that's a really good point on the rip, because then we can kind of have it as our icon. So like when you pull up the website, it's like the rip W. So
Okay.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I like that. And then yeah, polling is a good idea, and that way we can have like kind of the images. And actually, yeah, I'll also send, like I said, the info on how we want to collaborate on number one, who is familiar with chat and Discord, because with both of those, number one, it's obviously not in the metaverse. It's just a stupid thing that I feel like, I feel dumb saying, but also the fact that we're able to really vet who's actually able to be in there. But I don't know, it's a lot of us we're around like for internet forums, so maybe we do that like through the website. We'll look at that as another option as well, but we just want to make sure we've got a space that is secure and has privacy for it.
Okay, so I guess just to hammer this down, it looks like everybody's leaning towards org. So we voted, that's what it is. And on the logos, I think I saw at least two. Okay, so Saba said she would go with whatever we want. Maria liked the last one, the ripped one.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of leaning toward that one as well. That one in the fire. Since we've decided, Rachel, what say you?
Those were the two that I preferred. And
Okay.
I like the idea of the lipstick. It just doesn't work in execution, I don't think.
Right.
But I like the fire because I think it ties in with some of the other stuff that the party is doing, like the Texas Trailblazers and those kinds of things. But if we wanted to take the Texas off and just do the wild as the acronym, I think that this one works better.
Sarah?
No, yeah, I really like that. And then Samina just made a good point. She said the animal print might be fun to play around with, like especially as we do like our merchandising for like fundraising and things. And that's a really good idea. And then
Yeah.
like all the gears started turning. So I'm like, ooh, see, this
Exactly.
is why it's nice to have everyone together.
Yep.
Well,
So
and I did look when I was looking, I thought about the endangered species, like Texas native
Yeah.
endangered species. I was like, because like we're literally being hunted in Texas.
Oh, true. Women are
Like
hunting species right now.
women are literally like we're talking about men who are going across this nation,
Yeah.
not just across the state where they have authority. They are going across this nation to track down women who they feel like have gotten out of line. Okay. They've gone to Washington for that age group and getting them more engaged. And when I was thinking about it, I worked in a theater once backstage and I did the fly bar. And back then we manually cut the cellophane to change the colors on the light. But when I stopped working at the theater, every time I went to a play, I could tell where they made the mistake. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Oh, someone was out of position, And so I think of it like that, building out a that can really teach these young people how the process works, but also the skills that, like, if they wanted to really get into it, they wanted to work on a campaign, they would kind of know what that was and what needed to be done.
Yeah,
So,
and when they want to join these boards, whether it's the ballot board, the school board, the council, able to kind of have that inhibition where, because it seems so overwhelming and it seems so intimidating, if like Rachel's thinking about, like when you see how the sausage is made, suddenly it's not as intimidating, and you're like, oh well, if that guy can do it and he has no idea what he's talking about, then why not me?
yeah, it's that whole TikTok campaign. How hard could it be, boys? I loved that. But yeah, it's a dream. It probably won't happen in the next few years, but that's where I would like to see us go eventually. And then this last part is just kind of fleshing out places where I saw holes that I felt like needed to be addressed. And so this is where we talk about intersectionality, racial issues. We know that our our friends of color are impacted differently, and that has to be acknowledged because it's relevant. And what that looks like right now in the world is very different for different groups, right? We know that our Hispanic and Latino friends are living in a nightmare right now. Like, it is absolutely terrible. And the concern about how that may go over to other demographics as things play out. Like, I know that when we bombed Iraq, right after we put the National Guard in Los Angeles, my brain went, wait a minute, that's where our largest population of Iraqi immigrants is, in Los Angeles. So if he decides he wants to go to war, then what happens to those people? Like, all of these things impact our communities and our families, and the things that impact our families impact us. That absolutely has to be acknowledged. LGBTQ, we've talked about, we want to bring those people in. The way that group is being isolated right now is very concerning, and I know that they are scared of them, are scared, and that's not okay. Disability, right? We see the issues with disability happening with the Medicaid cuts. That's going to be a big deal. That's a big deal not only for women who have disabilities, but also women who are caregivers. Because if you are a giver who is able to work or is able to take a break because you have respite care and you lose that, then that is going to impact, that's going to have an economic impact on your household and on your community.
Yes,
So,
and 90% of caregivers are women.
Mhm.
So it's really important, not only that, but also that whole aspect of, in the workforce, yes, what parental leave falls under, it's short-term disability. So like literally these things impact each other, and so many are very much connected.
Yeah. So, and then immigrants, our immigrant families, we know the specific legal needs are different based on legal status. And if you're a refugee, or if you're an asylee, or if you have a green card, or if you don't have a green card,
And which country you're coming in from.
All of those are different, and all of that impacts, services you're able to get. And then we also, like we've said, we see the issues with immigration enforcement and the way that that's being implemented and how that's impacting families. We have families that they will not go to the grocery store anymore. We have families who they will not go to church anymore. I don't know if you've seen, there was a Catholic bishop that issued a dispensation for immigrants saying you are no longer religiously required to come to Mass, because we believe that you coming to Mass will cause more spiritual harm because of your concern about ICE coming and taking you from church. And so this is a big deal. And the level of abuse, like we talk about, if you've ever been involved in domestic violence circles or known anyone, there are so many levels of abuse. There's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's also financial abuse, and there's also spiritual abuse. And this is trauma. It is trauma compounded upon trauma. And how that plays out in different cultures it's hard. It's hard to undergo trauma under the best of circumstances. And these are not the best of circumstances.
Trauma, it is impacted actually even worse.
Well, and when you're missing the birth of your child, or your child, or the death of a family member, or a family member dies in an immigration raid, like which has happened in some of those farms in California. So we have not seen the raids here in Texas the way that they have in California yet. And I believe that it is very important that we continue to say that yet, because at a certain point we might, because we certainly have industries and large employers that benefit from immigrant labor, and we never see the employer going to jail.
Yeah, and I have a feeling some of that is because there were preemptive ones within the last couple of years, like that Giant Allen raid that was just horrific in its impact on the community. Yeah.
Just being aware, if you know immigrants in your community, in your apartment complex, you've got neighbors down the street, just check on them. I'm going to the store. Do you need me to bring you some milk? It can be really simple. Just let them know that you see them. We do have Indigenous women in Texas. They are often confused for Hispanics and Latinos because of their body structure, appearance, and because we used to be Mexico and there's some genetic overlap. But part of that includes the issues with immigration. And we haven't seen that as much in Texas, but they have seen it in New Mexico. The Navajo tribes have reported that they have had issues, their Navajo citizens being picked up by immigration. So this is an issue that impacts them, as well as their indigenous women historically are targets of violence, domestic violence. Oftentimes there's alcoholism, depending on where they live. And again, these are not issues we see as much Texas, but they are issues that do impact those communities in different parts of the country. Environmental justice. This is your climate change. We want to have a safe place to live. And I don't think that's unreasonable. If we have a hurricane, if we have a tornado, if we have lots of tornadoes, if we have February 2021, these things impact our household. They impact our family. They impact our kids. Okay. We need to be advocating for the solutions that are going to reduce these things. And we need to be advocating for building the infrastructure so that when these things do happen, our communities are resilient and able to recover quickly. That is clean energy. That is a stable grid. That is making sure that it's sustainable and affordable. I shouldn't have to donate $1 to pay somebody else's electric bill. I will. I have it to donate. What if we lived in a system where we didn't have to do that because it was taken care of? I don't know if you saw, I think it came out today, yesterday. They have told, the EPA has told several major corporations that they're no longer going to comply with environmental regulations. People who live close to plants and facilities, data centers, oil refineries, those kinds of things, that they no longer have to make sure your environment is clean. At the same time, they're gutting healthcare. They're also telling the corporations that it doesn't matter if you don't die.
Well, interestingly enough, it's the same week that we're out where the wildfire smoke was basically equivalent to smoking 100 cigarettes a year.
Yeah. Then we're almost done. Housing and homelessness.
I would say also along with the EPA, I mean, I was talking to the union president actually for USDA, and we need to keep in mind like these issues, they're intersectional, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes it sounds like, okay, the people that live near there. The thing is, it's also the employees there. It's also what's going into all our systems. I mean, it goes to everybody. And I think sometimes people forget that everything affects when we live in the same country.
Yes, the water table.
Yes. When it goes into the water, that affects everyone. And when they use that water to feed, to give to the animals that we eat or to water the plants that we eat. Yes. My father-in-law died of mesothelioma, which was from his exposure at work. He worked with carbon black, and his company that he worked for literally posted a picture of him in his work clothes covered in the black, standing next to his supervisor who was in khakis and a polo. And when I tell you, I did not say anything to my husband. I just shook my head, and it was those things I just followed because what are you going to say? It's not going to change anything. They don't see anything wrong with that. They were posting that as a pride to celebrate how hard a worker is. And they didn't see anything wrong with it. It's infuriating because from the day he was diagnosed, he lived less than a month after diagnosed. And it was a terrible way to die. And it's infuriating. And the EPA just told other companies that they can do that to other families. Affordable housing. This is a big one in Texas. So I think we are all being priced out of our homes between homeowners insurance and taxes. And they keep buying down the taxes, but it's always temporary. So at some point, maybe they don't, and we actually have to pay the bill. I'm not sure how that works out. We need diverse and affordable housing. We need housing that a single mother working one job can afford, because a single mother needs time to be at home with her kids. We need housing that people who are leaving abusive relationships have a safe place to go.
Yeah, seniors, young families. No, it was actually interesting. 2 of the 3 events I went to yesterday, this came up as the fact that it's not a housing shortage, it's an affordability shortage, because so many of these houses are being bought by companies and then being basically used for rentals, or you've got Airbnbs or Verbos where you don't actually have families able to afford it. Housing isn't a thing that you actually need. It's basically a luxury because it's basically being sold back to you. It's not a necessity anymore. It's something I can sell to you. And it's really sad and infuriating. And Plano is seeing, specifically Plano, because it kind of became national news, is seeing the effect of this, as they're one of several in the North Texas area having schools shut down because people can't afford to live there.
Well, and it's a cycle, right? Because you have the neighborhood that I live in is in Plano, and it's an older community, but you have older people who have paid off their home, and if they sell their home, they will not make enough to be able to move anywhere. And so they're kind of stuck. They're stuck in a house that's too big for them, that they can't really physically take care of because of its size. They can't do the yard work anymore, and they don't necessarily want to stay there, but there's no viable option for them to move. And because they are stuck, that prevents young families from being able to move in, that have kids, that would bring kids, that would go to the neighborhood school. And so it's this cycle, this feedback loop. And we also need support for homeless women. We need more safe, secure shelters, access to healthcare that is specifically tailored to that population. We know that a lot of our homeless population is veterans, and a lot of them need psychiatric care, and they need kinds of healthcare services made available, and then providing supportive services that provide stability. So this is where you get to a policy that maybe would look like universal income, which we don't have those words in here, but that's where that kind of a policy would fall under that, because we're looking at services that support these people, and so that they're able to fend society. Digital access and literacy. This one is really important to me. And I say that this is really important to me because I just went through the job application process 10 years ago. When I went through the job application process, I had to do a digital interview to get a professional job. They would not even look at my application until I submitted the digital interview. So if you don't have access to the internet, if you don't have access to a computer, if you don't have access to a cell phone or some kind of device that you can do that, that is impacting people's ability to enter the workforce. And that was pre-COVID. That was not a thing that happened because of COVID. That was already happening. And so this making sure that families and women have access to the internet, so that if they are able to find remote work and they can find a job that will let them stay at home and not have to pay an obscene amount of childcare to take care of their kids, that's great. But just to get any kind of job at all of that is online. And so when you have rural or low income areas that don't have access to the internet and don't have reliable internet, you're keeping people out of the workforce. So that one's, like I said, personally important to me, because I have experienced that. And the first time it happened, I went, wait, what? You mean if I didn't have a computer? And then you have these thought exercises, right? You sit down and go, okay, what would this look like if I did not have a computer? What would my options be? I would have to go to the library. Oh, wait, they're defunding those. I would, I would have to have a friend. I would have to have transportation. I would have to, all these other pieces.
Even just trying to be a part of communities like this one. I literally had 3 people let me know that Zoom or their internet wasn't letting them on because they were just getting a connecting spin. And obviously there's several of us that were able to connect, but the fact that we don't have reliable and stable internet, in Holland and Denton counties, where these are very affluent counties, there's literally no reason for this with the technology we have at our fingertips.
Exactly. And then the other piece of that is making sure that there are policies in place, because cyberstalking and harassment, and we're all ladies here. I'm sure at some point we have all gotten something inappropriate in our inbox, because that just seems to be a life experience that comes with being a woman. So what if we didn't have to do that? And here's the mental health care and culturally competent mental health services. And this goes back to, our community is made up of different people who come from different places, who have an expectation. We need to be able to meet with a healthcare provider who is at least compassionate and trying and not dismissive. And I know that I have had both ends of the spectrum. I have had doctors who were completely dismissive and didn't hear anything I had to say. And I have had nurses who were like, is there anything else I need to know? Are you sure you're telling me everything? And everywhere in between. So, but they need to be compassionate people, and they need to care. And when we're in a community, we have lots of different religious faiths, we have lots of different trauma levels, like trauma informed. We need to have access to people who are at least not trying to make it worse. Like that feels like the bare minimum. And then being sensitive to a woman's need for maybe a desire for, I only want to have female daughters, or I only want to have, like, some of that's religious, some of that's a modesty thing, some of that is just a comfort level thing. And where we're at right now in the medical community is women are not being heard. We're not being heard. As medical providers are not being heard because they're saying we need to be able to provide this treatment, and we're not being allowed to provide the treatment. Women are not being heard when they talk about their trauma, especially related to reproductive health care. But overall, our society is trending in a direction that is more violent. And what we need is to push back and to say, hey, this is not okay. And this is what we need. And this is why. And then we have the maternal mental care, making sure that we're screening for postpartum depression, and other issues. There are so many issues that come with having a baby. Abuse goes up after you have a baby. Domestic violence goes up. If you are, the number one threat to a woman is the father of her child. That's statistically proven. So that is all that I had on the agenda for tonight. I think we got through everything.
Yeah, like I said, I'll send out that email, but we'll also, kind of like we talked about earlier, share those options, whether it's Wix or Squarespace or whatever, because Bluehost is just the worst. These are some of the changes that are kind of being talked and going on in the background, and I know they might seem like just sort of administrative, but it very much is all kind of being part of that, not only our consistent branding, but just for safety and privacy purposes. And so we really can, like, pass that torch, be able to have someone immediately pick it up and be able to go forward rather than trying to rebuild these things from the ground up every time. So please, feedback is welcome, especially since we all do have a variety of backgrounds and experience to be able to say, ooh, hey, I was part of this organization and they did this one thing and that was really cool and helpful. We would love to hear that, please. And then of course, if any of y'all have any questions as we head out tonight, the virtual door is open. Obviously, we've worked together a lot over the last few years, so please, let's just continue the very collaborative experience. We build the community and say, hey, you are not alone, and there's actually a thing here locally that we want to become even bigger and better. So yeah, I am excited, and people are excited about the changes and what's happening and what next steps could be and how to get in. But yes, to your point, Trish, we need them to become officers.
Well,
yes.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming and being a part of this and being supportive. I appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule and providing the feedback. I think this is going to be really good for the community. I think it's gonna align with what Kendall's trying to do with the party, with their messaging. There's a puzzle piece that I think that it fits.
Saudi and I have talked a lot about this over the years. The more that we can fill in the gaps rather than trying to be covering the same thing, the much stronger we be. The much stronger we'll be.
When I put in the comments about the event, our goal is to supplement and support. I am not going into Denton County and telling the county they're doing it wrong. They're not doing it wrong. They're
exactly.
She froze.
Okay.
I think that's our sign we're supposed to get off now.
I know, right? No, that's perfect. But yes, exactly. And that's kind of what we've been trying to do, right? Where we're supporting the clubs and
coalition
stuff.
building and working together and being stronger together.
Just one step.
Yes. This is I think strategically this is exactly where we're headed. Yes. And then going back to the party as well, I think for a long time we didn't necessarily feel connected or supported. So I think that's
why so many clubs did. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really nice now to have someone who's not only do we want to move forward, but we're all going to get there together.